We're now going to listen to a really valuable perspective. We're going to talk about the role of the elected representative. And exactly as Martin said, this is not about replacing elected politics, it's about complementing it. So I'd like to invite the politicians who are going to speak to go and get microphones. And meanwhile, we don't have a formal break, but while they're getting their microphones, talk to someone you don't know. Apply the suggestion here. Find someone you don't know in the room and introduce yourself. We have about 5 minutes. And as many of you know who do participation, this thing about food and drink and the stuff around the actual the meeting is as important as the meeting itself. And it's important that we look at how participation fits into the broader context, which of course includes this vital perspective of elected representatives and representative democracy, which unfortunately sometimes gets forgotten when we just talk about methods. Little practical thing, we now have a hashtag for those of you who are networked on social media, hashtag Improving Democracy 2018, which hopefully leaves you a few characters to actually tweet something. So that's great. Hope we have lots of discussion there as well. So I'm really glad we have a great panel, international panel of politicians here. We have Helena Balthammar, the mayor of the city of Linköping, Joana Balsemão, the councillor from the Municipality of Cascais in Portugal, Councillor Aslam from the city of Luton, and of course Ann-Margrethe Livh, who already spoke earlier, who's the housing and democracy mayor of the city of Stockholm. And we often have this idea sometimes that power is zero-sum, that if you give up power, you're giving it away, or as a politician, you've worked hard to be elected, why would you share it with the citizens? And I think that's a very narrow way of looking at it. But all 4 of you chose to come up on this stage at a citizen participation conference. So what is it about this that is important? What have you done which has inspired you? And I think we'll, again, start alphabetically. Helena, do you want to talk a little bit about 5 minutes about the experience in Linköping?
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity also to tell us something about what we learned from Linköping. And I'm really curious also about the other cities, what you've learned about participation. In Linköping, it's a city 200 kilometers from Stockholm. We have 158,000 inhabitants. It's a high-tech city. And we've been working with citizen dialogue for a long time, but not in this new way that we started. Because we saw the need of deepen the democracy and deepen the citizen dialogue, and to make an impact on social sustainability. And we choose to have this kind of capacity development to manage complex issues, dialogue-based, in one of our communities. Berga is the name of that. And it's a community started in the 50s, was built. And 80% of the buildings there are apartments, and 20% is single houses. And in this area there lives people from 100 different countries, and 60 different languages is spoken. And 16% are living in social benefit. So it's a great mix in that community. And when we started this new approach to deepen the democracy, which we saw the need for, the first step we made was that we interviewed 100 different people living, working in this area. And the question we had was very open. We didn't have all the answers. We didn't know the result of this dialogue that we started. We asked them, how is your view on living in Berga? And we get different answers, of course. The second step, when we got all these answers from all these interviews, was that we invited them to a meetup. And then we started the dialogue meetings that continued for 1.5 years with several different meetings we had during this time. And the results from these meetings, there were people living in Berga, people working in Berga, there were CEOs at these meetings, there were full-time politicians, there were high level of civil servants, it was all kind of people at these meetings. And what we learned is that people in Berga wanted to have more meeting spots. They wanted to meet from different cultures, from different backgrounds. They saw the need of more meeting spots. They wanted to have barbecue events. They wanted to have a library. They wanted an outdoor gym. So this was really important for us to learn more about. How could we make this possible? But even more than these results, what they wanted more of in their community is that we learned that the dialogue with co-create means that we didn't avoid the different opinions. We had all the hard different talks on the table and discussed them, and an open talk and gave the different perspectives. As a politician, we also didn't always have the answers to all the questions that was up in the room. And that was okay also, that we didn't have all the answers at the beginning, because we all came with different resources and different powers and could make this possible. And what we can see when we did the evaluation from the people taking part of these meetings, because the room was full at all the events that we had, these dialogue meetings, that was the trust for the municipality increased during these dialogue meetings. And for a politician and for the civil servants and the people living there, it also gave new perspectives during these dialogue meetings. And what we can see is, it's very time-consuming, of course, but it gave us new knowledge also, because involving the people and the citizens in Berga in this area, it gave us more knowledge about what they were thinking about their part of the city. And when asking this kind of open question, how is it to live in Berga, we didn't even have the results there. But it's important also, as we saw during this 1.5 years that we had the dialogue meeting, that we had the full support from our high-level politicians and the high level of civil servants, because that also makes it possible to make the change for the area. And this week, we had the last dialogue meeting with this community, and a few of the people living in the area said what they thought about these dialogue meetings and this new way of working in Linköping. And they said, through these dialogue meetings, I learned more on democracy. And another one said, I feel that I've been listened to through these dialogue meetings. And it's important, what we learned from this is it's a time-consuming process, but it needs to take time. You need to start early, and you need to get back also what is happening with these ideas that you have come forward with. And it's also important to have a neutral speaking person during these dialogue meetings that the people can trust in, and it's very essential, of course. But it's also important not to avoid the hard questions. It's to visualize these questions and topics that we are not agreeing on, but to give the different opinions from everyone also. And what happens now in Linköping? We've been doing this for 1.5 years, these dialogue meetings, and learned a lot back to the civil servants and the politicians in the municipality. We are implementing this new way of working with dialogue meetings to co-create with the citizens in a totally new way in our municipality. So we are taking this way of working to the other parts of the cities and to our decision-making system also, because we need the citizen dialogue to also take part in our decision-making, because that will also make the decision-making even better when we get the people involved in a much better way. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Helena, I'm picking up on a lot of themes that came up in the previous discussion there. Good practices, starting early, not defining the problem yourself, and also the need, what Joana was saying about the need for good moderation. So that's interesting to see the parallel. So, Joana, what are your thoughts on the value of participation?
Thank you, Edward. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the invitation. Congratulations to the organizing team. So you want me to explain why participation is important for us, Cascais Municipal Council. Cascais is 2,000 and 10,000 municipality. We started participatory practices, I would say, 10 years ago, Local Agenda 21. I would say the jewel of the crown right now is the participatory budget, PB, which has been ongoing for 8 years. So I will speak from the perspective of a council that has this hindsight, but also from the perspective of a council, an executive body that feels we still have so much to learn. So what spurred us to start these kinds of policies? First, there was a macro situation that we felt very strongly in Cascais, and I think in many other local authorities around the world, which is the shift from hardware to software. The shift from what we used to do a lot before as local authorities, meaning infrastructures, hardware, to software. So there was less need for building roads or cultural centers or whatever, and a stronger need for software, for relationships and values. So, and this meant also a shift from working as civil servants for the people as to working with the people. So if we want to put people in the center, we have to change our mindset and our policies. This was one important piece of the backdrop. Another important piece was statistics. Turnout to local elections was terrible, worse in Cascais than in Portugal. In Portugal, we have a turnout of around 55%. In Cascais, we had 45%, which was difficult to understand. On the other hand, we see other statistics. There's distrust growing everywhere. EU citizens, only 16% of them trust parties, 30% of them trust governments, 33% of them trust the parliament. This is not good. So we started to look into the theory of public participation inducing citizen engagement, and the theory told us lots of good things. There's many advantages. The study says there's two levels of advantages. One is the process and one is the outcome. And by process, as we heard before, it means the dialogue, the listening, the learning, the answering, not just listening. Sometimes we need to answer. Well, very often we need to answer and we can't always say yes. So answering also means saying no and explaining why no is. Public participation is also about the outcome. And let's not be naive. Of course, politicians also like to know that whatever policy or project we implement is closer to the expectations of the citizens. It's a win-win situation. The theory also says that if we involve citizens, we might be able to induce more holistic understanding of whatever is happening in the council, so less belly button focus. We also read and heard that if you have a more engaged society, it will be more interesting society, more resilient, but also more demanding. And so we understood that there were advantages for government and citizens, and we started on this course 10 years ago. I can tell you now that 10 years down the road, the benefits are there to a greater or lesser extent. We feel public, participatory budget in particular is an amazing experience. It really is. To have 200 people come in on a rainy Friday afternoon, and in Portugal we do this quite late, it's at 9 p.m. in the evening, and just sit around a table, discuss ideas, negotiate, prioritize. Many people come in with an idea and then they let go of their idea because somebody else at the table has a better, more important, more urgent problem. It's been really enriching, but there's always a but. Reality also showed us that these benefits can only be reaped if we put in place certain very important requirements. And I can summarize them into three. The first requirement is humbleness, because when a public authority, an executive body, and its staff set on the path of participatory policies, we need to be humble. We need to understand that it's a trial and error process. It's a learning by doing process. It's about the trust that was mentioned before. It's about being brave, letting go of power and trusting. Trusting that the process that we've put in place is solid and that the citizens will also trust us to carry it through. And accepting that adjusting the methodology every year is okay. It's healthy because that's what participation is about. It's a dynamic process. Second lesson that we learned that is very important is about monitoring, evaluating constantly. So we are lucky enough to work with an external consultant, Nelson probably somewhere in the room. This external consultant will give us the perspective of somebody from the outside. And this is really, really, really important. We need to monitor the profile of who participates, the expectations, what these people think at the end of a process, what happens to the projects we promised, were they implemented, how soon, etc. We cannot improve if we don't have this constant monitoring. Third lesson, strong values, really strong values, because if during the process we don't apply transparency and accountability, if we create black boxes or the cherry picking that you mentioned before, the process will go down the hill and the trust factor will disappear. Another important strong value is about outcomes, implementation. Whatever we promise, we have to deliver. Otherwise, trust will dismantle. Despite the difficulties and the effort and the time consumption, as you mentioned, Cascais is totally determined and set on this path. We feel whatever obstacles and difficulties far outweigh, don't outweigh the advantages. The advantages far outweigh whatever difficulties we may find. And in addition to ensuring that these requirements are always in place, we've done other things, like we've created a citizenship and participation division 8 years ago with fully dedicated staff, and this is really important. We have full political buy-in, full staff buy-in. It's not enough to have a division. We need everybody in the council to understand why this is important, because it's a collaborative effort. It won't be a 10-people division implementing these projects by themselves. Another important thing that we've realized along the way is that we have to offer diversified tools. Not everybody participates the same way. Not everybody wants to participate. But whoever wants to be engaged needs to be engaged in different ways. We all have different drives. Some people prefer online. Some people prefer presential. Some people prefer regular inputs. Some people prefer sporadic or annual inputs. And we have to cater for these differences because everybody is different. And this is why we have tools like participatory budget, huge turnout, 75,000 voters, 18% of our investment budget is dedicated to this tool. And this is a co-decision tool, as you know. It happens once a year. The winners of the projects are involved the whole way through. But we also have participatory budgets for young people at schools. And we also have online tools like the one Giovanni mentioned, Cascais City Points. It's a new app, it's still in demo phase, but we won a UN prize for that already. And this is totally digital. And it's not so much about co-creation, it's not so much about co-decision, it's more about nudging people into co-creating. So through City Points, you download the app, and you get points for good deeds, meaning if you go and give blood, or if you go to public sessions, or if you recycle, for example, you get points. And then you can convert these points to prizes, meaning a basket of organic vegetables, or sometimes a ticket to a good concert, and other prizes. Yes, it's gamification, but it doesn't destroy democracy. It nudges people along the way. So I think I've spoken for too long.
No, there's a lot of valuable things.
This is just a broad perspective of what has happened to us. And I'll be happy to answer further questions. Thanks.
Thank you. There was a lot of... Thank you, Joana. There was a lot of valuable stuff there. And again, linkages. You mentioned this thing about answering sometimes means saying no. It doesn't magically make more resources appear. And I was minded of Martin's point of the council or local government as Santa Claus, this idea that we need to be really careful with expectations and humility, which also has been mentioned by others. So, Councillor Khan, your experiences from Luton have also been quite wide and diverse.
Sure. Now, first of all, just like to thank Salah for inviting us here. I'm really delighted and honored. And today you might have planted a seed which may shape a better and brighter future, not only for those people in the room, but even for the marginalized outside this room. And before I begin, just wanted to sort of confess why Sweden is so close to my heart. In my day job, I work for AstraZeneca Pharmaceuticals, which is an Anglo-Swedish company. I have worked with them for over 20 years in sales and marketing, and I'm very sure if it wasn't for AstraZeneca, I wouldn't be where I am here today. So thank you, Sweden, for playing your part in shaping who I am today, a migrant, a son of a migrant, and perhaps in the future you will also have your own, probably someone like me from your own community standing here and sharing experiences. So like you said, I'm here in a capacity as a councillor from Luton, which for those people who haven't been to England or Luton, is a small town with a 250,000 population north of London, with its own airport. And the participation from the politician perspective is very, very important. I think it's probably more important than anything else. I'm going to explain to you my views on why participation is essential in building and protecting cohesion and social sustainability in all communities, and especially in super diverse communities like Luton. I'm the lead portfolio holder and member for the Strong Communities, and Luton community has been and continues to build around the benefits and the challenges of migration. And this is now taking place, as we all know, in an increasingly globalized world. And Luton community is continually changing, it's vibrant, it's diverse, self-organizing, international and activist, a real and positive challenge for any politician. My own experiences mirror this diversity and helped form my commitments to participation and social sustainability, or as we say in UK, community cohesion. Like many people from the Indian subcontinent, my family fought in the Second World War and were invited to the UK to help rebuild the country. I was born in Kashmir, which is north of Pakistan, and came to join my father, who first arrived in 1960. I grew up in Luton, had an amazing journey, and I'm proud Lutonian for the past 37 years. However, I was no different to any other migrant, that I've had fair share of prejudice and racism. How I dealt with it in my own way was possibly different to some of the other people who might have reacted in these situations. For example, when I went to school and I took chicken tikka masala to school, and other kids made fun and said I smelled. But instead of showing a reaction, I offered to share food, encouraging them to try it. And so I made friends and tasted so nice, and I like to think that I may have contributed in making chicken tikka masala a national dish in the UK. So, and when I walked in predominantly white area, I was called a Paki, which is a common word used for the Asians over there, for those people who are resistant to migrants. And in those situations, I would walk over and congratulate them for recognizing me as being Pakistani. As there used to be a normal saying that most Asians look the same and they did but ding ding. So, that would get a very different reaction from them. From my part, the issue was lack of education and interaction, which resulted in fear. So I was very fortunate to be in an environment where I worked with people from various backgrounds, Jewish, Indians, Irish and Europeans, which has made me even more convinced that the importance of building a relationship of trust, understanding between communities is very, very important. And formed by these experiences, and also aware that many other people from similar backgrounds to mine have had not that similar positive experience. So I felt compelled to do something about this, and so I chose politics. As an elected representative in Luton, I know that it's essential that the nature, the values, the aspiration of our communities are clearly reflected in our policies. They also need to be reflected clearly in the way which councillors as community leaders act. The leadership model for communities like Luton, and you could argue that the future in a globalized world, has to be based on around listening first, encouraging participation and dialogue, enabling the co-production of services, and above all, building shared vision, a place of the future of our town. to have stronger communities that can live together in harmony, we always need to make clear stand on the values we believe as a town and respect equality, diversity, cohesion, and actively countering prejudice, hatred, and extremism. Developing understanding and respect for other cultures, actively involving them in building relationships are the means to achieve this in these communities. Our Livh program, which is a strategy for driving economic development, building prosperity, and reducing inequalities in the town, puts strong communities in the heart of this vision. So our approach to this strategy involves promoting participation and partnership with other citizens and communities across all the work that we do. And member-led engagement and participatory budgeting is also proactively managing these tensions and issues in cohesion and safety. So what have I learned from becoming a councillor is very, very simple. Doing nothing is not an option. If we do not connect all our communities through a genuine citizen participation, especially with those marginalized, excluded, we will not succeed in delivering and investing growth and a wider social policy agenda. And my message to those politicians, like I said, doing nothing is not an option. Your role in this ever-changing environment and communities is probably the most important. Being brave and making those bold decisions certainly will determine a better and more cohesive future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I was struck by the idea of community leadership and a different model of what it means to be a politician and taking those difficult conversations even when you're met with hostility. So that was very, very inspiring. Thank you.
I think you raise a key point. You either sit on the fence and probably don't grab the bull by the horn, as they normally say. You're not going to make a change. A change is difficult for people, even for politicians. You've got to face the music, and you've got to know what the issues are. And as a politician, you need to be aware of the solutions and be adaptable to change. And you've got to look at different ways of working. And we've heard earlier, using other tools and means of those communications and reaching out to those people who are harder to reach is very important.
Thank you. So, Ann-Margrethe, you spoke earlier, and you've heard both panels.
Yes.
So I was thinking maybe you have some reflections and thoughts about the role of the politician.
Yes, I have a lot of reflections. But I would like to start by just how I think myself.
Yep.
Because many years ago, before being a politician, I was also an activist. And as I said before, I live in Linkoping, and I have poorest part of Stockholm. And I have lived there for over 30 years. And so I can see that it's also a question of power here. Stockholm is we have a big segregation between poor parts of the city and rich parts of the city. And it was very cruel for me when I really realized these things, because beside Linkoping there is a wealthy area called Bromsten, where people, middle-class people living, and in Linkoping we were poor. And in those days, 15 years, 20 years ago, the word was integration. Everybody loved integration, integration, integration. We should talk about integration every time. So we said, when we were going to construct a new school, we said it would be between Linkoping, the poor area, and Bromsten, the rich area. And we were very happy, activists. Yes, we were so... But the rich people, the wealthy, they said no. We don't want a school between the two suburbs. We don't want to mix the children. And we said, this is crazy. So we started, demonstration, collecting names, and we were thousands of names. But then the people from the Society of Bromsten, they said, we don't care about this. We are going directly to the mayor or the vice mayor. And we failed. And then I said I had to be the vice mayor, really. Because no, not for that. But I mean, when we are talking about local democracy, when we are talking about dialogue, participation, I think we must always remember that there is a question of power. And when I talk about that participation and what we are trying to do in Stockholm, I think about the suburbs. Because if I go to the center of Stockholm or the more wealthy parts of Stockholm, there are no problem. People come with their PowerPoints and say that dun, 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 and you must do that. And I say, okay, but I don't think I can do that. Yes, I mean, there is a very, very big difference in power. So when we are talking about local democracy, I think about to get people, give people in the suburbs, the poor suburbs, people who have no power today, to have power. And that is not very easy, but that is, if we cannot do that, I think we will have a more segregated society, and we will also have a less democratic society, but not only that undemocratical forces, they are everywhere. And if we are going to really face that and change, then we must really, really listen to the people who today have no power and see how can we involve them. And as I said before, in some suburbs of Stockholm, for example, Linkoping, where I live, 50% are not voting. They are not voting because they don't feel that they are a part of this society. And how can we change that? And of course, this is, I must say that I'm a politician, this is also a political issue, because we have not the same opinion. Different political parties have not the same opinions about democracy. And when I came to power, and my coalition in Stockholm 3 years ago, we were looking at how have we worked before with local democracy. And I honestly think it was a disaster, because we had what we call, I don't know how to say it in English, postlap democracy.
So that's like postcode. It's a postcode democracy.
Yeah, because people can especially in the suburb where I live, Rinkeby, they call people to a big meeting. Hey, we want to listen to you, and you have to write in a small paper and you put it on the wall. I want that. I want a swimming pool. I want trees here. I want another school. And people were doing that. And then what happened? Nothing. Because you didn't communicate with the people. You understand? But I wrote here, I wanted here a swimming pool for the children here in the middle. No one listened. And that is very, very dangerous. This way of working is very, very dangerous, because people get disappointed. People don't believe in politicians. People don't believe in the society. So, and how can we change that? That is not very easy. And we have just had 3 years, a short time. But we think, first, personally, I had a lot of inspiration from Porto Alegre, for example, and other places. But you cannot use the same model in Stockholm as in Brazil. It's not possible. But we think, but I heard other people here also talking about how do we start? Of course, when we made the budget for Stockholm, we wrote nearly in every page, participation, 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 democracy, democracy, so that all politicians and all people working in Stockholm should be aware of this is the way we shall think now in the future. But it's not so easy, because people are not used to work in that way. I mean, suddenly, you are going to listen to people. That is, how do we do that? Calling to a meeting, people, they don't come. 2 or 3 person maybe come and they say something. So we have a lot of examples when we have been starting, but I will just tell you about one example. There is a small place in Stockholm called Fagersjö, less than 10,000 inhabitants. It's also a poor area, really, and with no service, and a lot of disappointed people. And also the chairman for the local district there, the politician there, a friend of mine, he really went there and tried to ask people, I mean, just going around talking to people, what do they want? And one of the most important thing is they wanted a place, a local culture house or something, because they have no meeting points. And then they decided, okay, here we give 500,000 Swedish crowns, and we politicians are not going to decide. You are going to decide. What do you want with this house? And then they made a lot of, not like, they had meetings too, but mainly they went around in the area. They went to schools, they went to a meeting point for young people, for old people, trying to get in contact with all people there. And so people could express what. Oh, I see. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I finish very, very, very quick. So people could, and then people could vote. For example, what do you want to have in this house? And then people could vote about that. And then first they got all you know, the propositions. So they made a list what people wanted, and then people could vote. And then they collected the votes, and they did as the people had decided. And the politicians said, no, we are not going to involve. It's like this. This is very shortly. It's a deeper process. But now they are going on with this. Now they are having about 3 million in another process like that. So, for example, how to change a big area there, a park and buildings and so on, and constructing a big model over the whole place. So people can come there and they can say, for example, when we are talking about urban planning, which is it's a big issue in Stockholm. People could come there and they can say, here we want to build something, here we don't want to build something. They could change the model. And that process is going on now. I cannot say that this will be 100% successful. But as someone said before, we must try and we must learn. And maybe we make a lot of mistakes. I think we do. But we are learning and we are listening and we are really trying to develop this process and to take part in different places in Stockholm.
Yeah,
my time is over.
Yes, thank you very much. That really ties into the idea of humility, which was raised by Joana and many others. And I'm really glad you raised this issue of power and how the risk is if we just do participation, invite everyone without thinking through, maybe we empower the people who already participate. Yeah. And this thing, the challenge is that we are perhaps not used to this way of working and
no.
Accepting that there will be mistakes made and we need to work on this.
But yeah, I think also we have started. But it's not coming from me, you know, about women's organization. And there I had some women coming to me. They want to meet. We want to meet, but not like an ordinary meeting. We want women in Rinkeby, Tensta, in that part of the city. We want to have workshops. What do we want? How can we do? So we have started these workshops. A lot of women have participated. That's just the start. So I don't know what's going on, but in the way of but also I think you must say to people, we're not. I mean, as a politician, you must not be afraid to give away the power. You must not, because then you are a bad politician. But you must also say to people that it's not so easy to be given power. You must take the power and to support people to be strong and take the power. That's a part of the local democracy.
It's a journey there for everyone. Yeah. I think we've heard a lot of valuable input and we've got a short time before lunch. So I'd like to end with asking each of you, imagine for a moment you step into a lift at a political conference. There's a fellow politician who is very skeptical about public participation. I was elected, that's my representation, why should I listen to this? This is all a waste of money and time. What's your elevator pitch? You have 2.5 minutes, it's a very slow lift. What would your argument be? As a politician, why should you really look at this thing called public participation or dialogue? Any takers?
No, you.
Yeah, look, I think the learning in this is I was hearing from your politicians that in your most affluent area and educated people, the turnout to come and vote is much higher compared to those areas which is most deprived. So there's a learning in this. So for those people who are not engaged, they don't actually feel any difference from the opportunities that you may be creating. So it is very, very important to ensure that we create a system which has shared values, which gives respect, and also creates opportunities and makes the society inclusive. So from a politician perspective, it's dangerous. You're heading towards disaster if there's no public participation.
Thank you. Don't be so polite.
But I have been talking so much.
But you spoke first. Do
Okay.
you want to go?
No,
No, you do.
Well, okay, so it's a slow lift, and my pitch is really short.
Yeah.
So before the pitch, there's something I didn't mention before from a politician's point of view, and being frankly very transparent. Public participation is a very risky avenue. I don't know if it can help reduce the low turnout, increase turnout. This hasn't been proven, but I do have the feeling every day that it can help contribute to make us lose elections or lose the number of elected members if we don't do it properly. So I mentioned before 75,000 people voted in our latest participatory budgets. If 10% of those people are not happy about the way we conducted this process, if we were not transparent or accountable or rigorous enough, if the engagement wasn't genuine, we risk losing 7,500 votes. In theory, I'm simplifying. But these 7,500 votes can be the difference of having one more councillor or less. So this has a very real impact. And so before my pitch, if we want to go along this path, we really have to do it properly and in a very genuine approach with maximum rigor. And my pitch is super fast. It's be brave, connect.
Thank you.
you can.
Being a politician, I think it's important to show political leadership, and one way of doing that is sharing power, of course, with the citizens, and making the decision-making even better is to co-create, to make the use of the citizens' experiences, knowledge is really important. Then we have really good decisions-making in the cities, I think.
Thank you.
Okay, I should say to a politician who doesn't want to share power that he or she is stupid, because because if you want to develop an area, the people who live there, they are experts. And if you get a better developing, you get a better, a better city, a better area if the people are involved. And that is very, very important. And I mean, as politicians, you are not so important. I mean, people who are living there are important. And you get a much better city, a much better society if they are involved. So listen to the people.
So, thank you. So I've heard themes about leadership and bravery and power and the importance of being realistic. And I think it's safe to say that this requires bravery from politicians, from civil servants, but also from our citizens. And so there are many themes which have come up in the session before this and this session, which I hope you will pick up on in the small groups.